Hello and welcome. In this video, we will be talking about anthropological theories, which is chapter 6. Chapter 6, we already have finished the topics such as classical evolutionism, where we talked about E.B. Tyler, Morgan and Fraser. In the playlist, you should go back and check out these videos first and then start with the second. In this video, we are discussing historical particularism. Historical particularism. The scholars that we are going to associate with historical particularism is Franz Boas, and Franz Boas was critical of the classical evolution. According to Franz Boas, it was important to collect data, and data was everything as far as Franz Boas was concerned. So he started the concept of fieldwork tradition, which according to him is that historical particularism we can only understand society in comprehensive way if we have separate analysis on each and every aspect of society, in detail, on every aspect of society in detail with respect to every other society which are there. It means that if we are studying an institution called as family, then we should have a basic knowledge about this institution in various society. For example, society 1, society 2 and society n. So for all the society we should have an analysis on the social institution of marriage, and after which we can conclude, or we can come to a certain point. So that is what was the point of Franz Boas in general. Okay. Historical particularism. Historical particularism was given by Franz Boas. He was basically critical of classical evolution, in particularly the ethnocentrism. The classical evolutionist, if we have the way we have talked about it, right, that they said that Victorian age was basically the highest stage of development, which definitely showed the ethnocentrism, and Franz Boas was critical of this ethnocentrism and hence critical of classical evolutionism. Now we'll talk about basic about him. He believed that to overcome empirical problem, the only way which is there is to carry out detailed regional study. Regional studies. So in order to overcome the problem of empirical data collection, empirical problem basically means that the lack of data which is available, or which is even trustworthy, right? So these data are not accurate. So that can be made accurate only with the detailed regional studies, and that too of individual culture as well as individual aspects of culture or cultural traits. For example, there is a body, then there are different parts of body. Similar, there is a culture and different parts of the culture. So in that way, when we study each and every part of a body, we understand body as a whole. So similarly, culture can be understood only when we study it completely, we study it thoroughly without breaking them into pieces. But at the same time, there is importance of each culture as well as each piece of the culture or each trait of the culture. He wanted to reconstruct the histories. He wanted to reconstruct He wanted to reconstruct the history. He stressed on the collection and organization of data. He majorly focused on collection and management and organization of ethnographic data on all aspects of many different human societies. So his basic motto was of collection and organization of data. So if someone even says data, Franz Boas would look at it. So you remember that historical particularism is all about data, that to reconstruct the history. Only after information on particular of many different culture had been gathered, then only it is possible to generalize. But the problem with historical particularism was there was so much data that a person would die under this, or person would get buried under this so much of data, and there was no generalization. The way we got theories from classical evolutionism, diffusionism, structuralism, cognitive, etc., we do not get any theory from historical particularism. The main reason for this was that there was so much of data which could not be processed and hence could not be generalized. They implied three methodologies. They used three methodology. The first they have to understand the local history. Then the stay with the local is important, and then learning the local language or language of the masses or tribe is important. Then only one can understand in detail about that society. Historical particularism is an approach to understand the nature of culture. It is used to understand the nature of culture. As far as culture is concerned, culture is the complex whole of knowledge, art, belief, morals, customs, faith, belief, and all other habits and capabilities that are acquired by human being as a member of society. The definition of E.B. Tylor. And we have already discussed about the nature of culture, so you should just go and watch a video called as Culture 2.1. So the nature of culture is hung, H-U-N-G, hung UD. So what is this hung UD? You should just go and watch it. NG stand for non-genetic, H stand for historic, and what does U stand for? You tell me. So the nature of culture is hung. So this is what you will get in first lecture. Then Franz Boas stressed on the importance of gathering. He stressed on importance of gathering of so much of data as much as possible before making any assumption. So there was definitely a need of gathering of so much data before making a generalized statement. But there was so much data that even Franz Boas was buried under the data. So there was no basic generalization which was made. It included recording. So it included recordings of the oral history. Recording of the oral history was there. Then there was various methods called as participation, observation. Here person participates in that activities of the various group and understand and observes the various changes that the society have brought in. Then we'll talk about some of the accomplishment or achievements. Under the achievements of Franz Boas or historical particularism, they started giving importance to data collection, and that too first-hand data. That for an anthropologist it is important to participate and take the data, and through that too through field work method or field work tradition, where a person will go in the field and will collect data. Second, they gave importance to field work. As we know that the classical evolutionists were basically the armchair. Classical evolutionist was basically armchair anthropologist. Classical evolutionists were basically, or any earlier anthropologists, they were basically the armchair anthropologist. They would sit on the library chair and they would take the data which they would get from missionaries, administrator, travelers, etc., and that is how they used to form the theories or any other things. But as far as Franz Boas was concerned, such was not the case with him. He used to go on the field and understand what was the need of the time. The criticism that is being faced by historical particularism is very simple. We have discussed it. The first criticism is that they were reluctant in making broad theories. Basically, there was so much of data that they had collected, it was nearly impossible for a person to go through each and every one of them and then come to a solution or to a theory. So there was no basically a broad theory that they made. There was so much of data that was collected, and it was one point where the data was so much that an anthropologist would be buried under it. So thank you for watching. Stay tuned for the next video.